Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Around the Nation right here, TOT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you on this finally Friday, because it's finally Friday. We got some fun stories today on this Friday show, so welcome. So we're going to talk about Donald Trump and his unlimited power under Article 2. Then, remember the social media summit that was happening yesterday that I talked about? Well, it turned out to be a complete and utter disaster. Fun. Then we have Paul Ryan versus Donald Trump. Apparently, Paul Ryan has found some courage. Took him a while. So we've got that statement and Trump's response to that. Then we've got the ICE raids that are happening. Very important stuff. Then we have a really, really sad story out of Philadelphia of a man who did an attempted robbery for a reason that you wouldn't expect. So we'll talk about that. I don't want to give too much away on that story, but it is really kind of heartbreaking. So we've got that story. So we got some fun stuff. We got some disastrous stuff. The usual kind of mix. If you haven't already, please like and share the stream so that everybody can see these stories. They're really, really interesting. And it's really important. It helps the show when you share. There's other ways to help the show, of course. Become a patron, patreon.com/TOTNation. In fact, I want to thank a couple of patrons today. We've got Paula Ellis, Seth Baker, David Ventimiglia, and Stefan Pereira. So thank you to all those patrons. Patreon.com/TYTNation. That's how you can support the show and keep independent, progressive media going. Okay. Anyway. And there's another way to support the show as well, and that's to join the membership program through YouTube. So there's another way, and you can do that by hitting the join button on the screen. Okay. Anyway. Fun stuff before we get into it, too, since it is a Friday show. Apparently, there is a plan to free the aliens in Area 51. As somebody who has admitted that now I can't think of the word, but who has admitted that he enjoys watching alien-themed shows. It's kind of funny. Apparently, there are 300 people that have signed up to go and liberate the aliens in Area 51. Okay. Well, hey, good luck with that. And it made me think, so how come, we know Donald Trump, right? Well, Donald Trump, if he found out that there were the aliens, well, he would tell anybody. Because he's not a smart person. And he doesn't know how to keep his mouth shut. But then it makes me think, well, wait a minute. That's probably why they could be keeping the aliens from Donald Trump. I don't know. So that's interesting, fun, and ridiculous. I really suggest not trying to invade a military installation. Besides, it's not like they would be in Area 51 anymore anyway. It'd be the world's worst kept secret. It's probably in somewhere else. if they're the aliens that exist anyway. So, anyway, that's just the fun and ridiculousness that we have on just this Friday. Okay, moving on. Let's go into our first story here. Let's talk about Donald Trump and his lack of knowledge on Article 2. Part of me wanted to, if I had any sort of artistic ability, that sidebar, that would be Palpatine with his unlimited power with Donald Trump's face on it. God, I wish I was an artist. I wish I could figure that out, how to do that. But I don't. But anyway, you'll understand when we get into the story. President Donald Trump believes that the Constitution gives him, as the President of the United States, unlimited power How? Well, because apparently of something called Article 2, which according to him, nobody's really ever talked about. Take a look.
It's also interesting. Number one, there's no crime. And how do you obstruct when there's no crime? Also, take a look at one other thing. It's a thing called Article 2. Nobody ever mentions Article 2. It gives me all of these rights at a level that nobody has ever seen before. We don't even talk about Article 2. So, they ruled no collusion, no obstruction. Very simple.
Very simple. Oh, well, there's something simple there. And it appears to be the man who was talking. I have rights at a level that nobody's ever seen before, thanks to Article 2. Really? So, no, wait a minute. There have been 44 presidents before Donald Trump that have followed the Constitution, right? That have followed Article 2. Wouldn't those previous presidents also have those same powers? Those same rights? Oh, no. It's the rights at a level that no one has ever seen before. Wow. But we don't really talk about that. Oh, no, apparently that's why nobody knows, right? No, look, I think it's fairly obvious that Trump has no idea what's actually in Article 2. So, in case you didn't know, and look, most of you at home, if you don't know what's in Article 2, that's fine. You're not president of the United States. So now, let me give you an overview, and let's see whether or not he has these unlimited powers, right, that we've never seen before. Okay. Now, Article 2, Section 1, points out that the president shall be elected every 4 years. It lays out the rules of, you have to be 35 years old. And then, of course, it goes through and talks about the selection of senators and congressmen. Okay, all that stuff, that's in there, right? So what about Section 2? Well, the Section 2 deals specifically with the presidency. It says that the president is the commander-in-chief of the military, and he can create treaties. He can make treaties with other countries. However, that power is limited because every treaty has to be approved by Congress. They also have the power to make appointments, but those appointments also have to be confirmed by Congress. Fill vacancies, some have to be confirmed by Congress. We already knew some of those powers, and there are certain limits on what the president can actually do, as was pointed out right here. Well, now, what about Section 3? There are 4 sections total. What about Section 3? Is this where the good stuff comes in? The unlimited powers. Section 3 says the president can do the State of the Union address. But wait. Section 3 also says that the president shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed and shall commission all the officers in the United States. Ooh. He can take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That's it. Got him. Unlimited power to execute laws that Congress passed. Oh, right. What does any of this have to do with no collusion, no obstruction? Again, he's talking about the Mueller report. And earlier he talked about how, the Rosenstein and Bill Barr, great guy, the great attorney general. Gee, I wonder why I think he's great. They both were like, well, obviously no collusion, no obstruction in the Mueller report. Okay, what does Article 2 have to do with any of that? Well, let's go to Section 4. Section 4 says, the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. That is Section 4. That's the last section. That's all of Article 2. Oh, the irony. Oh, my God. He says, well, I didn't do collusion. There's no crime. So I cannot have done obstruction. Look at Article 2. Well, we just looked at Article 2. Article 2 says, oh, right, you can impeach the president for high crimes and misdemeanors, which could be obstruction of justice. Whoops. Donald Trump may literally be the dumbest person alive. This is just another piece of evidence for that. 25th Amendment. By the way, you know what the 25th Amendment basically is? It means that there is another constitutional way of removing the president if they are found to be mentally incompetent. Think about that for a minute. Another way to get rid of the president if they're found to be incompetent. Just saying, guys. 25th Amendment. Think about it. Hilarious. Okay. Dumbest man alive. All right, moving on. Now, President Trump's social media summit, which happened yesterday, was about what you would expect when you invite a slew of right-wing extremists, conspiracy theorists, and just flat-out bigots. Now, there are people like Ali Alexander. Now, this is the person who said that Kamala Harris wasn't black enough or something, or wasn't an African-American black. And then you had a meme smith who goes by the screen name Carpe Dunctum, right? You also had such distinguished guests as conspiracy blogger Jim Hoft of the venerable publication The Gateway Pundit. Now, those are just some of the guests. There are also other notable guests, but also some notable people that were missing, and we'll get to that. But during this summit of what could be considered some of the worst people on the internet, Trump decided to go after free speech. Well, now that is very interesting. What did he say? Let's take a look.
China will admit there's nobody like these brains, but they're not using that brilliance, and they're not using what we gave them fairly, and they have to do that. And we don't want to stifle anything. We certainly don't want to stifle free speech, but that's no longer free speech. See, I don't think that the mainstream media is free speech either, because it's so crooked, it's so dishonest. So to me, free speech is not when you see something good and then you purposely write bad. To me, that's very dangerous speech, and you become angry at it. But that's not free speech.
That's not free speech. Why? Because I get angry at it. Wait, what? Hold on. So for those of you, and this seems to be a misconception about what free speech actually means, it just means that the government cannot imprison or censor you for having an opinion and speaking your opinion. Now, you can get in trouble for threats, because that's not free speech, or, harassment, that's not free speech. You also have, of course, incitement or riot. That's also not considered free speech, fire in a crowded theater, et cetera, right? But you have the government, basically, that cannot, under normal circumstances, if you have an opinion, even a negative opinion of a political figure, like the President of the United States, it's why, you can't get thrown in jail for that. That's why during the Obama administration, for example, you could say all sorts of horrible things that President Obama, he's a Kenyan Muslim socialist. He wants to bring down America and is probably the Antichrist. That is why the Obama administration couldn't send their goons to knock down your door and haul you away to prison. Couldn't do that. Free speech. That's what free speech means. Now, if people write something bad about you based on information that they have, and they have an opinion, right? And it's not, considered libel, because there are libel laws as well. That is considered freedom of the press. Now, if you go out of your way to write something that is damaging and completely untrue, well, then, of course, you can have libel laws. But then the line on that is actually a little blurry, right? Because then there are public figures versus, private figures and citizens. And, of course, public figures, I think there's a lot more leeway in the stuff that you can say about them, right? Again, this is why people, for example, on the right could say the most heinous things about President Obama and not get in trouble for it because Obama is a public figure and now Donald Trump is as well. I mean, this is literally in the First Amendment, freedom of the press. But apparently Donald Trump, of course, has a problem with people writing what he considers to be fake news. Now, what does he consider fake news? Well, he said it. Anything that makes him angry, that he thinks is not true. Oh, okay. Now, again, going back to our Obama example, if the President Trump is so angry about people writing what he considers to be false things, or just generally writing false things, where was he during the birther conspiracy, where they said Obama was not born in America and therefore illegitimate president, and he's a Kenyan Muslim socialist put here to destroy America? Where was Trump? Oh, right, he was spreading that conspiracy. Oops. I don't think he was so adamant about clamping down on that kind of speech then. Fake news. What changed? Oh, right. So now, again, you heard he took the time to slam the press. He said that the mainstream media is not the free press either, which they are. Literally have protections under the Constitution that says that the press is, protected by the Constitution. It is considered free speech and freedom of the press. And look, muckrakers, right? So there's a traditional word for that, word for people who write inflammatory pieces. That's being a muckraker. That is the tradition of journalism, holding people in power accountable through their muckraking, right? And that's what the press has been doing when it comes to Donald Trump. Now, I wish the press has been that aggressive during the Obama administration in pointing out things that he's actually done that we don't agree with, that aren't good things. But at least we're having some of that. The press is slightly better now because of the Trump era. But anyway, so now he also said later on that, quote, "We're not going to just allow it to happen like this. We're not going to be silenced." Literally, Donald Trump is the most powerful person in the world. And he's like, "I will not be silenced." Really. So now I want you to pay attention to some of those words, because right after the summit ended and they all went to the Rose Garden, right? And Donald Trump, William Barr had actually left after announcing something about immigration, ICE raids, etc. After they went back in, this was the scene at the Rose Garden.
Threatening me in the Rose Garden. You are a punk. You know the journalist, you're a punk.
You should not be attacking journalists like this.
For the record, he'd kick your punk ass. Oh my God.
Okay, so that's interesting. Now, one of the people that were there, and the video cut off too short, actually, one of the people there was Joy Villa. Now, she is known as being somebody who spread the QAnon conspiracy theory. And she said, well, fake news is over. Fake news is over. We love real journalists, but fake news is over. Says the person who's literally pushing a conspiracy that is fake news. QAnon. Now, as far as Gorka, who he was yelling at, getting into a reporter's face, calling him a punk, well, that was Playboy correspondent Brian Karem. Isn't it funny how a Playboy correspondent can actually do better journalism than a lot of these right-wing bloggers that were invited? Remember, you had James O'Keefe, who was filming this as well, Sebastian Gorka, as I said before, and the guy from, not from InfoWars, but he had a guy from the Gateway Pundit, which, of course, again, comes up with lies and conspiracy theories literally all the time. I mean, remember the blown out so-called orbital socket on one of the guys who had shot, what was it, Mike Brown? So, yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of fake news here, right? Now, as bad as this was, reporters, people get into a reporter's face. It actually could have been worse. And why do I say that? It's because prior to this, the Daily Beast had reported that the people who have actually been banned from social media for harassing behavior, etc., or breaking TOS, weren't actually invited to this so-called social media summit. So they had no Facebook, no Twitter. They were not invited. And you also didn't invite the people who were actually banned from social media. And the whole purpose of this was to whine about how conservatives were being mistreated in social media. That is hilarious. Now, who wasn't invited? Well, Laura Loomer, who is an anti-Muslim activist, she was not invited. You also had Alex Jones, of course, not invited. And Proud Boys Men Group founder Gavin McInnes. Now, you might think, okay, well, wait a minute. Why didn't they get invited to this? They were banned off social media. And so, they would want their voices to be heard by President Trump, right? Right? It must have been an accident. No accident. On purpose. Here we have a quote here from one senior Trump administration official familiar with the planning. Now, they told the Daily Beast, quote, "What benefit would it be to anyone if Laura Loomer were in the same room with the president?" Why on earth would we do that? We aren't that stupid. Come on. Hilarious. Oh, no, we're not that stupid. I mean, we could invite Laura Loomer, and we could invite Alex Jones, which, by the way, Donald Trump has been on Alex Jones' show before. And so he has a deep appreciation for the work that Alex does. And yet, wouldn't invite him. Wouldn't invite him because the administration said, oh my God, why would you invite these people? They're crazy. They're insane people. We're not that stupid. Okay. Now, what's funny about that is that left the right wing absolutely enraged. You had InfoWars hosts, of course, going off because apparently they were found to be too crazy even for the White House, for the Trump White House. So what you saw here earlier in that video was an acceptable level of crazy. Acceptable. Now, of course, the whole thing would be kind of hilarious, except for the real threats against the press. Not just Gorka getting in somebody's face, and calling them, you're a punk, you're a punk. Okay, whatever, right? You can have an opinion. Act like a tough guy. Don't care. But no, it's Trump's tacit approval of all this. And also the rhetoric. By the way, afterwards, he said Sebastian Gorka had won. That's what he tweeted out. Okay. But no, the real problem here is, again, calling the press fake news, calling them the enemy of the people for having either an opinion, which you're allowed to have, and also reporting things factually, which they've done. He said, we're not going to allow it to happen like this. We're not going to be silent or silenced. When the President of the United States is so ignorant about the Constitution, about the freedom of the press, and what free speech actually means, that's a big problem for all of those things. Okay. Ridiculous. Okay. So let's go to where there are no good guys. They're all bad guys here. All right. Now, President Trump is not happy with former House Speaker Paul Ryan after Ryan had apparently made some unflattering remarks about Trump in a new book. Now, the book is American Carnage by Tim Alberta. Now, in an interview with Alberta, Paul Ryan had said this about Trump, quote, "We've gotten so numbed by it all," apparently addressing Trump's vulgarity, which, look, I don't really care about. Look, you want to be vulgar? You want to say the F word? You want to drop the F-bomb? I don't care. Whatever, right? I love how focused some of these people are on Oh no, decorum. We must have decorum. You cannot say that word in the hallowed halls of the White House. No, who cares, right? I mean, at least we know Donald Trump sounds like what he does, right? He's at least honest to himself in saying these things. But anyway, Paul Ryan's going to continue. He says, not in government, but where we live our lives. Have you ever lived around real people? Real people also are vulgar. But he says, quote, we have a responsibility to try and rebuild. Don't call a woman a horse face. Don't cheat on your wife. Don't cheat on anything. Be a good person. Set a good example. Sage advice from someone who, of course, is not a good person, who has not set such a good example. For example, Paul Ryan has tried to cut Social Security for old people. Please remember that one of Paul Ryan's biggest dreams when he was growing up, when he was tapping kegs with his college buddies, was to cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. That's Paul Ryan. But there's more. See, apparently Paul Ryan wants to pretend that he is the adult in the room that stopped Donald Trump from his worst impulses. And he said, and there's a reason that he apparently backed Donald Trump on pretty much everything. He said, I told myself I got to have a relationship with this guy to help him get his mind right. Because I'm telling you, he didn't know anything about government, which is true. I wanted to scold him all the time. And yet, of course, you didn't. You did absolutely nothing. He also added, those of us around him really helped to stop him from making bad decisions. All the time, we helped him make much better decisions, which were contrary to kind of what his knee-jerk reaction was. Now I think he's making some of these knee-jerk reactions. You want to pretend that you're the adult in the room? That you stopped Donald Trump from making the worst decisions? Really? 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 Funny, because all I saw was the enabling of Donald Trump. And from you and the other so-called adults in the room. I mean, we saw this on the tax fight. The tax cuts that the Republicans pushed, Paul Ryan pushed, he loved the tax cuts. $1.9 trillion in tax cuts, 83% of it went to the rich, the richest Americans and corporations. He didn't get in the way of any of that. No, that was the decision that he pushed him towards. Oh, no, Donald Trump, you want to cut tax cuts for corporations because it also helps you. Oh, yeah, well, definitely. Yes, totally going to cut corporate tax rate. But at the same time, they also eliminated the SALT deduction, which hurts people in, higher tax states like New York and California. So it's a punishment for the blue states. Well, congratulations. That ended up raising a lot of people's taxes. But no, he wanted to scold Trump to keep him on the right path. But again, didn't. Backed him up on nearly everything that he wanted to do. You know why? It's because Paul Ryan has no backbone. He's not a profile in courage. Paul Ryan's an empty suit. Now, of course, Donald Trump, upon hearing these quotes, was enraged. Understandably so. Here, I'm going to read some of those. He said, Paul Ryan, the failed VP candidate and former Speaker of the House, whose record of achievement was atrocious, except during my first 2 years as president. Well, you only had, of course, both the House and the Senate. And basically the only thing you did was pass giant tax cuts for yourself. But he continued, quote, ultimately, he became a long-running lame duck failure, leaving his party in the lurch, both as a fundraiser and leader. But it had nothing to do with the supreme unpopularity of your administration among the majority of the American people. I'm actually not blaming Paul Ryan himself. I'm blaming the entire Republican Party because all they did is get tax cuts for the rich themselves. But anyway, Trump continues. When Mitt chose Paul, I told people that's the end of that presidential run. Which, by the way, he's not a fan of Mitt Romney either. He quit Congress because he didn't know how to win. They gave me standing O's in the great state of Wisconsin and booed him off the stage. He promised me the wall and failed. Happening anyway. Really? Where's the wall being built? And let's not count the crowdfunded piece of wall, which, by the way, was ordered to have them keep their gates open because they built it on federal land without permits. Oops. But anyway, he continues, one more tweet. He had the majority and blew it away with his poor leadership and bad timing. Never knew how to go after the Dems like they go after us. Couldn't get him out of Congress fast enough. Wait, did you get him out of Congress, or did he quit because he couldn't win? Oh, the contradictions. The contradictions. No, again, he quit. Why did he quit? Well, he says, Ryan does, he told Alberta that he viewed his retirement as, quote, an escape hatch to get away from Donald Trump. Now, is that true? I think partly true, but I think it's more of him trying to get away from the Republican base. Again, the Republican base is the party of Donald Trump. That they're the party of anti-intellectualism and hatred of minorities at this point. You see, Paul Ryan is the little lackey that serves the donors, right? He's the guy who's like, okay, let's cut Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. We can privatize it. We can give it all to the donors because I don't believe government works. And, yeah, you know, I just want to give the rich all the money. That's Paul Ryan's job. That's what he was there for. That's what he's always believed, right? He is an Ayn Rand Republican. And so that's different from the party of Trump. What Trump has actually, look, Trump hasn't changed the party. Trump is the party, right? They're the party of racist, hateful, self-important people who are also jealous and stingy. That's what Donald Trump is. And that's who he represents. Ryan is, again, a super weak little weasel who wants to do anything to make the donors happy. And the donors, by the way, despise the Republican base. Because they're like, look, we want all the money in the world. And we're more than happy to exploit people's hatred and anger towards others. But we don't share in that. We just want money. We just want the money. That's it. And Paul Ryan is one of those people who I don't think necessarily hates people of color, you know, or anything like that, but just says, I want to get the money. Let's get the money. Let's get the money. So that's the two halves of the Republican Party. That's why the politicians and the donors, they hate the base, which the base, of course, is the people that basically they have told, and said, look, the source of your problems are minorities, and you should hate these people, and you should divide yourselves and fight amongst each other so that it makes it easier for us to pick your pocket. And that's what this is. That's what this is. And that's where the big disconnect is, right? But I don't think Ryan retired to only get away from Trump. No, thanks to Trump, he achieved enormous tax cuts for the donors. And so basically, the donors want to reward him. They want to reward him with, like, a lobbying position. I think Paul Ryan is a lobbyist now. But here's the other thing that they achieved, and another reason why Paul Ryan felt that it was okay to leave. After the tax cuts were passed, what do you think that did? Well, that increased the deficit, right? We have all these, we have less revenue and still the same amount of money going out. So what's that going to do? It's going to create deficits, and it's going to help the Republicans push the idea that, hey, man, look, we've got all this deficit. We can't afford Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security or any of these social programs. We got to get rid of them. We got to cut them. Well, what's Paul Ryan's dream? To cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security and to cut government. Well, therefore, he has achieved a major milestone on his goal, and he could retire in peace to become a lobbyist. That's it. That's probably why he ended up quitting, his major reason. And he got as close to making that happen as he could. But here you have the idiot in the White House going too far with the open racism. And so there you go. He's not a brave soul for speaking out or an adult. Again, Paul Ryan is a conniving little coward in an empty suit who's now only speaking out because he is safe. He's not running for office. He doesn't have to appeal to that racist, hateful base and can be honest about how he feels about Trump. It's the same story with all of these former Trump officials. They claim that, oh, no, we tried to stop Donald Trump from his worst, and acting on his worst impulses. We're the adults here. We were the ones holding him accountable, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, they enabled him because they loved the power and they had their own agenda. Paul Ryan needs to be exposed for his cowardice, the coward that he is. And as part of the reason, through his economic policies and stoking of racial hatred, could allow someone like a monster like Donald Trump to get elected in the first place, to create those conditions. Okay. I'm going to take a break. We'll come back. We've got ICE raids. We have heartbreaking story from Philadelphia. And maybe a Hillary Clinton aide speaks out about Hillary 2020. What? We'll talk about that here when we get back from the break, after some super chats and, of course, your comments. Stay right here. We'll be right back. Around the Nation.
This is over. Be real journalists. Those are protecting journalists. The real journalists, thank you. But
Welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here, TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here with you. Okay, so we've got some comments here. First, we got a couple of super chats. Jedi Mullet 77 says, breaking Trump news. The aliens are bringing intelligence, wisdom, and technology. Lock them up. Lock them up. Lock them up. So, now, look, to be serious for a second, right? So now there's a lot of worry about the aliens coming, right? They're going to take our resources. You really think that a species that has mastered space travel in such a large universe, galaxy, etc., it's going to come here to take our crap? Really? I mean, I guess I don't buy it. I know that the late Stephen Hawking was very worried about that, and I get it. Stephen Hawking is a lot smarter than I am, and I guess he can't really divine the minds of alien creatures. But to me, it just wouldn't make sense flying all the way here for stuff that is actually way more available out in the universe. There's nothing on Earth that is special and significant, except I guess for humanity, and we are quickly messing that one up. But anyway, fun comment. Gets you thinking. Sarge Tag, another super chat, says 66 people have left the Trump administration since Trump was elected. Only the best people. Kelly Q204 says, I like your streaming. Well, thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that. And then Suga93 says, Mike Gravel is less than 2,000 donors away from the debate stage. Just $1 can get him there today. So, look, if you want to see Mike Gravel, which I think would be really interesting, he's a very important, anti-war voice on the debate stage. If you want to see him, then you can donate to Gravel's campaign just to get him there so we can start having those conversations. And I do agree with that, and I think it is important to have all those different perspectives on the stage. Okay, anyway. And I think we have way too many establishment perspectives on the stage, by the way, already. And so we could use some difference, and Gravel could provide that. Okay. Anyway. All right. Moving on, let's go to Trump's ICE raids. Now, President Trump recently announced that there will be nationwide raids conducted to arrest members of undocumented families. Now, that has been scheduled for this weekend, for Sunday, but there's also some reporting that they've already actually begun. Now, the raids will be conducted by ICE over multiple days, will include something called collateral deportations. Now, that's, of course, deportations where authorities will detain immigrants who just happen to be there, right? Oh, we're not actually targeting you. We're actually wanting to target the criminals. But if you're there, well, then we're going to take you in anyway because you're undocumented. Now, it's supposed to take place in about 10 major cities. I wouldn't be surprised if there were more. So now this was actually supposed to happen last month, but thanks to Donald Trump and his complete incompetence, they actually had to postpone it. Because for one, it's a massive undertaking. I mean, you're literally going to take a lot of agents and go raid these different places to get undocumented immigrants, ship them out of the country. That's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of planning. It's going to take a lot of money. And now that these immigrants, they know about that this is happening, well, then they could either move or they'll be prepared to fight against it. And how can you do that? Well, it's because immigration officials can't actually come in to your house. They can't break into your house. They can't force their way. You actually have to let them in. It's kind of like a vampire, how that works. No, just let me into your house. No, I don't think so. Yeah, I'm going to have to see a warrant first. And so that's how you can deal with ICE agents. The other reason, of course, that it got postponed is because there are border agents that said, wait a minute, you're putting us in danger. People are going to come after us now. And so we feel like we're going to be in danger. Thanks a lot for just blurting this out. Now, the New York Times also notes that the administration wants to use the operation as a show of force to deter families from approaching the border. Well, how does that work out? Oh, no, first it was the detention camps that were a deterrent, and now the raids. But the raids will actually lead to more detentions because, again, they have to process people and then get them shipped out of the country. Well, now you're going to have more people that are being detained in these camps. But see, that's the whole point. The people running some of these detention facilities are private prison corporations. You have Geo Group and CoreCivic. And right now, it costs $700 a day per migrant to house them in these facilities. Now, how much money do you think that goes to actually taking care of the migrants? Again, we've detailed the conditions inside these facilities. A lot of kids have no beds. And the administration has argued that they shouldn't even have soap or toothpaste. How much of that money per day is being spent on housing these migrants? No, somebody's making money off this, and a lot of it. And more raids equals more people in the facilities, and that equals more profit. It's not a deterrent. Again, it hasn't even worked because the amount of people that are still coming into this country is at a 13-year high. And at the same point, and this is interesting, right? Obama actually had deported more people than Donald Trump. Why? It's because Donald Trump, instead of deportations, is actually holding more people. They're holding them so that these companies can make a profit. Is there any wonder why, when Donald Trump got elected, stocks for these companies, private prison corporations, went way up? I think we know why. But what's Trump personally getting out of this, though? It costs a lot of money, and it's making somebody a lot of money, right? These private prison corporations. What does Trump personally get out of it? Because, again, when you look at anything, any policy, anything that's going on in this administration, you have to ask, okay, well, how is Trump personally benefiting? I mean, he doesn't have a wall, right? He didn't pass tax cuts for the rich because it's not, or he did pass tax cuts for the rich, but it's not really popular with the American people. What is he getting out of this? Well, he's getting what those two things have failed to do. A reason for people to reelect him. And that's the thing. He's running for reelection. He wants something. So, again, he's going for the ICE raids. And, of course, this is popular, rounding up the immigrants and putting them in these terrible conditions. That is popular with Trump's base. They love that. They love hearing about these terrible conditions in these camps. They love the idea of punishing the other for daring to come into our country. The cruelty isn't the bug, it's a feature. And it's the point. And that's why, of course, so many of the border agents, by the way, are and members of ICE have been found out to be racist. I mean, let's go to that Facebook group, for example. That same group that laughed about migrants dying and it said that they wanted to throw burritos at congresswomen, those are the members of the Border Patrol. Even the leader, Trump appointee Carla Provost, was part of that Facebook group. Now, when these terrible messages in this Facebook group came out, she said, quote, "These posts are completely inappropriate and contrary to the honor and integrity I see and expect from our agents day in and day out. Any employee found to have violated our standards of conduct will be held accountable." Well, now, new story out. She was part of that group. Provost was part of the Facebook group. And so, of course, obviously, she knew about these posts. She saw those posts. Not only that, but according to The Intercept, the names of 3 current Chief Border Patrol agents, 9 current or former patrol agents in charge, and multiple Border Patrol union officials are still in this group. Nobody said anything. Only when they got caught. But she was in that group. That's who makes up ICE agents. That's who makes up Border Patrol. Make no mistake, they delight in this cruelty. That's who they really are. And this really reflects the ugliness that is America under Donald Trump and Republican rule. Okay. Whoops. There we go. In what is a heartbreaking story, a would-be robber decided to give money back to a cashier after seeing that it wouldn't be enough to pay for health care. Now, there's a man that is currently unidentified who is in this picture, held up a one-stop smoke shop at gunpoint. So now, the store owner had told police, according to CBS 3, the man who was armed waved a gun in the air and demanded that the cashier give him all the cash in the till. Now, after getting only about couple $100, he decided that he was going to give it back. At that point, the worker said the robber had become friendly and left without taking the money or hurting anyone. And they said, of course, the reason was that it just wasn't enough money to pay for his daughter's kidney transplant. Wow. So, okay, would-be robber comes in, has a gun, armed robbery, right, and says, oh, I just need your cash. When he doesn't get enough cash for his, apparently, his daughter's kidney transplant, says, okay, well, look, I'm sorry. Here's the money back. I'm not going to hurt anybody. I'm just going to go. And that's what happened. So now the local news station, CBS 3, talked to the owner of the store and said, look, I'm kind of mixed on this. For one, he threatened an employee. He tried to rob my store. Obviously, I'm not in favor of that. He had a gun. Sounded like he was willing to use it, but at the same time, I understand why. Desperation makes you do stupid things, right? Desperation to save his daughter's life. Like, he gets it. And so he's like, look, again, I'm mixed. You shouldn't do that. But also, I feel for the guy. I understand. And that right there, for one, shows extreme empathy, right? But also shows how broken the system is. There are people that are driven to desperate, extreme lengths, nearly committing a crime, an armed robbery, in order to save someone's life. I mean, this is a situation that some people find themselves in every day. I mean, not robbing a place, obviously, but being in that situation where you don't have enough money to save your own life. That's the system that we have. To save your kid's life or your own life or the life of a family member because you don't have that money. I've heard plenty of jokes about, oh man, how are we going to afford this? Maybe we'll end up robbing a bank. I don't know. It's a joke, right? And I've heard it before, but in this case, there was somebody that was desperate enough to try, not robbing a bank, obviously, but robbing a smoke shop. How messed up is that? That we live in a country where this is kind of normal, where people are desperate enough to try to steal in order to save somebody's life. I mean, we do not guarantee health care in this country. That's a crime. And how messed up is it, by the way, as well? Because this is something that I didn't really get talked about, that I kind of noticed. You know how easy it is to get a gun in America? It is easier to get a gun in this country to try to rob someone else than it is to actually get health care when you need it. I mean, that's insanity. You can get a gun, no problem. Guns are everywhere. Guns are a guaranteed right. You talk to any right-winger, they'll tell you Second Amendment, that is guaranteed. You are guaranteed to have a gun. That is your human right as an American. But it is not your right to have health care in this country. It's insane. It's gross. And no, by the way, the emergency room is not health care. It's not health care. And so let's just be honest about that. That you know what they would do? Somebody who needs a new kidney and needs a kidney transplant, you send them home. That's what the emergency room does. You know why? Because the emergency room isn't a doctor. It's not set up for that stuff. You cut your hand open and you need somebody to sew it together. That's what the emergency room's for. It's for emergencies, not for long-term care, and certainly not for transplants. But anyway, so now the Philadelphia police captain, Sekou Kennebrew, also talked to CBS 3, and he said this, quote, I don't know what he's referring to, Don't know if he has a daughter who is some sort of in some sort of medical need, but he is still in violation of the law for committing a robbery, even though he didn't walk away with anything. Well, now wait a minute. Is it a robbery if you come in and you don't steal anything? I mean, for me, it's like, okay, well, he didn't take anything. Yes, he originally was going to, but then he didn't. Is it generally, I mean, should it be considered a crime? He gave back the money. Now, what I think is more an actual crime is threatening an employee with a gun. I'm not in favor of that. Nobody's in favor of that. I don't care how much pressure you're under or how desperate you are. You don't threaten somebody with a gun. He could have killed somebody on accident, and that's unacceptable, right? At the same time, I get it. I wouldn't, if they find out who this guy is, and I'm sure they will, I hope they don't throw the book at him. I mean, yes, there must be some sort of punishment for threatening somebody with a gun. It could have went off, could have hurt somebody. But I don't want you throwing the book at this guy because of the situation, right? For God's sakes, we need single payer. We need health care for everybody. If he truly does have a daughter that is dying because she can't afford a transplant, well, we got to help. Something's got to happen, right? Healthcare is a human right. And by the way, you could avoid any of these tragedies by making sure that healthcare is a human right. And so ultimately, that's kind of what I pull from this story, is that sometimes, and there have been movies, of course, about this, that people are moved to desperate measures because of our broken healthcare system and the fact that we're the only industrialized country, the modern industrialized country, that does not guarantee healthcare to every one of its citizens. This is why you have situations like this. We've got to fix it. Man. Okay. We got a couple minutes left. We'll go over, but we can do the Hillary story. Okay. Hold on for a second. Despite possible news to the contrary, Hillary Clinton is 100% sure that she is not running for president in 2020. However, if she does suddenly get the urge to jump back in for another possibly failed attempt at Trump, there is someone who plans to stop her. Well, thank goodness. Now, this is Jennifer Palmieri. She was the former director of communications for Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. And she said at the possibility of a Hillary 2020 run that she would try to stop her any way possible. Quote, if Hillary Clinton ran for office again, I would do an ankle dive at the door and not allow her to do it because I love her too much. Aw, isn't that nice? Now, here's the thing. The press asked this question. They asked her if she would recommend that Clinton run again. But why? Why would she do that? Hillary Clinton's off in the woods. She's not interested in running, and that's great because America really isn't interested in her running. Sorry, the I'm still with her people. You are a very small minority of people. Most Americans are like, no, not interested, Hillary Clinton. Time has passed. Even people who supported her in 2016, now a lot of them are saying, no, not interested at all. We saw what happened, right? Now, the establishment, of course, continues to ask her, why? Well, that's because Joe Biden is a disaster. He's a gaffe machine. He lost after being against busing in the debate, lost 10 points in the polls. You know who's the two at the top? If Biden ends up dropping out, or if he continues to drop further in the polls, the top two would be Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. You know who the establishment really doesn't like? Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Especially Bernie Sanders. Oh, but Jeff, You understand, the establishment is propping up Elizabeth Warren. And don't you see all these glowing articles and things and tweets from Third Way? They love Elizabeth Warren. No, they don't. No. Here's the thing. They, yes, are trying to hurt Warren by giving her endorsements she never wanted, she never asked for, right? Now, it's true that Bernie Sanders is to the left of Elizabeth Warren. That said, some of Warren's policies are not favored by Wall Street. And she is not as right-wing, as status quo as the rest of the field. Again, Bernie Sanders to the left of her, which is why I'm in favor of Bernie Sanders. But they're far more progressive than the rest of the field, right? And besides, say this is, because this is their plan, right? The establishment plan, back Warren and hopefully knock off Bernie Sanders, which is not going to happen because, look, the base for Elizabeth Warren, the base for Bernie Sanders are actually completely different. Warren is not stealing votes from Bernie Sanders. No, Warren's taking votes from Biden. And yes, through a lot of people, Senator Sanders or Elizabeth Warren is actually their second choice. And so this whole idea of, oh no, it's Elizabeth Warren that's taking from Bernie Sanders and we're going to knock Bernie Sanders off by using Elizabeth Warren, it's ridiculous. But if they did do that, you don't think that they would turn on Elizabeth Warren on a dime and go and promote someone like Kamala Harris or a Pete Buttigieg? Of course they would. That's the whole plan. Now, to be fair, Hillary Clinton, back to her, no, she's not wanted. This is why she told the New York News 12 back in March, quote, "I'm not running, but I'm going to keep working and speaking and standing up for what I believe." Okay, well, you do that. Go ahead. Asked if she would run for any public office in the future, she said, "I don't think so." Again, thank goodness. Again, right now, everybody remembers you as pro-establishment and the person who lost to Donald Trump. I'm just saying, I wouldn't follow that up with another run for anything. I think it's kind of the universe is saying, their way of saying, your time's over. That's it. It's up. It's not as if Hillary Clinton didn't have already a long and distinguished career and also didn't make lots and lots of money off that career. But it's over. Time for a progressive. Whether it be a man, woman, transgender person, doesn't matter, right? As long as you're right on policy, then you have a home in the progressive movement and the future of the Democratic Party. If you're not, if you're part of the corporate establishment and somebody like Hillary Clinton or Nancy Pelosi, your time is coming to a close. Time to pass the torch. And I think at this point, Hillary Clinton has learned that lesson. And thank goodness she has. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you for joining. Please like and share the stream. Please like and share our clips as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. And hopefully you all have a great, great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday. And remember, change begins with you. Love you guys. We'll see you on Monday.